I'm afraid one of the lessons that the Richard Sharp and Dominic Raab stories are exposing is that any link to Boris is a disaster. It's not necessarily that Richard Sharp himself is dodgy, but his link is dodgy. And that link seems to be, any link to Boris is a link to the destruction of decency, a life damaged, undermined by the chaos that Boris seems to have brought with him. Everything he touched, including including the office, including Downing Street. The legacy he left behind was Liz Truss. I mean, just think of that as the absurdity. The effort to hang on. He did it first, and so has everybody else. The effort to hang on, the effort to put his friends in all the high places, to sell off Channel 4, to move his people into the media, to people the media with his cronies. And should Richard Sharp have been fired earlier? Of course he should. Was he always expected to fall on his sword? Of course he was. Was his leaving a disgrace? Of course it is, and it's even more of a disgrace, given the fact that he seems to appear to be still clinging on, given the fact the board doesn't seem to recognise that it was time for him to go. His job is not editorial. His job is to be the soul and the reputation of the BBC, like a monarch. So it's important that he demonstrates the decency of somebody who can follow the rules. Surely in this time of political dodginess, we should have now a completely independent appointment without political influence, a robust and honest approach. And then we will no longer need to ask why Rishi didn't urge him to go earlier, while Rishi didn't urge Raab to go earlier. Now, the person who called for the investigation wasn't Rishi Sunak. It was the Shadow Culture Secretary, Lucy Powell. Have we heard from the Culture Secretary herself? No. Do we even remember what her name was? Fraser. Barely. The Culture Secretary herself has remained mute. Nothing new there. So why was she ever appointed? What has she done? What has her predecessor done? What has the one before that done? Nothing. And Sharp is not the only one who has misunderstood the severity of this. They have as well. The rules around disclosure, perceived or actual, that put the reputation of the BBC at risk. And he has put the reputation of the BBC at risk. These stories about the £800,000 came out. And there's a pattern. There's a pattern to this behaviour. Raab, Sharp, these resignations. They simply tell us all about public office and sleaze. Whether it's true or not is about perception as much as it is about actual fact. And Lucy Powell, is she going to be any better? I don't know. Could she be any worse? No, I don't think so. So she'd asked for the report, and she got to see it first. So she knows exactly what she's talking about. It's a great shame that Richard Sharp, it's a great shame that Rishi Sunak, it's a great shame that the current Culture Secretary and all her minions don't know what they're talking about either. I would love to talk to some of them. I really would. I would love to find out what exactly their objective is, what exactly they plan to do with the BBC. Are they just running it down? Are we going to end up, when we tell the history of this age, are we going to say the history of the Queen is the history of the BBC? Yes, it was there slightly beforehand, but it became BBC TV and her reign. And almost to the day when her reign was over, the BBC disintegrated with the connivance of the present government.